we've gone over pretty much all of the basic color correction techniques, things that we could use to color correct our footage. What I wanted to go over today was scene correcting, okay, or what's otherwise known as scene balancing. We're going to start on this sequence, and then we're going to actually import some new footage and start working on that stuff as well for scene by scene corrections. But first off, what I wanted to show you guys was the most basic grading function or grade copying function that we could do. So I'm going to go over into my color page. You can see right now that I have the expanded view open, so I'm going to click on that arrow, those 4 arrows in the top right hand corner, to shrink everything down. And I'm going to need all of these controls here to do a scene by scene color correction, to do some scene balancing. The only real scene that we have in this test sequence is this, these 2 Banksy shots. So they were technically the same scene. So we're going to pretend that this is a scene in a film, and we're going to copy a grade from one clip to the next. Now, if you already graded one of these shots or both of these shots, I'd like you guys to reset both of those grades right now. So you can see I graded this one. I've got my little rainbow highlight around 0.5 there. So I'm just going to go up to my node editor and right click on the little itty bitty icon there and go to reset all grades and nodes. So you can see that little icon to the bottom right of the node. I just said reset all grades and nodes, and it returns it back to normal. And looks like my other clip, if I look at my node editor, didn't have anything. So if you have grades on both, go ahead and reset grades on both, and I'll show you guys what we're going to do next. This, out of the 2 shots, this wide shot is overexposed, and it's got some pretty big image problems there. It's clipped right here in the whites. So that's definitely my worst shot of the scene, of this 2-shot scene. So I'm going to start color correcting that one. And I'm just going to color correct it using the same tools that we've already discussed. Okay, so I'm going to set my white point first. So I'm going to drag my gain down a little bit to reduce that clipping. And then I'll bring down my lift using my master wheels. And I'm just going to keep bringing that downwards to kind of until those bottom reaches of the image start to kiss the very bottom of my graph. There we go. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my gamma color balance, master wheel, to just kind of increase the contrast and pull those midtones down in the image a little bit so that they're not so washed out. Maybe I'll do that a little bit more. Yeah, and you can see it really, if I adjust that gamma downwards, it's stretching it out on the parade, so it's increasing the contrast of the artwork there, and it's making things pop a little bit better. And based off of what you guys see on the parade, what do you guys, what kind of color problems do you think we have? It's a little too blue and a little too green, right? So I'm gonna actually pull my offset down, I think, just to try this out. I'm gonna pull my offset towards warm and magenta, and that actually fixes things up pretty good there. You could also try adjusting the gamma or the lift or the gain in that same direction if you wanted. But I think a general overall adjustment actually worked pretty good there on my offset wheel. So just a really simple, fast grade, kind of brought things back into range there a little bit. I'm still clipping here, which is problematic. But for the most part, this is a pretty good looking image, especially right here in the area that was correctly exposed. We're looking really good there. I've corrected this shot, and let's just say that, well, I pretty much shot this shot with the same exact environmental circumstances and the same exact camera settings. So I could probably copy this grade and apply it to this shot pretty easily, and it will at least get me started in the right direction of that grade, so I don't have to completely regrade it again. This is always the best way to do it because it's going to maintain consistency of your grades across multiple shots in your scene. So you always want to copy grades or use another function that we'll talk about in a little bit so that the grades match to the best of your ability. So let's just say I'm happy with this grade, with this color correction I should say. So I've color corrected this pretty well there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to left click down here in my icon timeline. So you remember this is my kind of, I guess it would be the clip timeline, where it shows you all the different thumbnails of every single shot in my sequence. So if I go here and I select this clip, the clip that I want to copy my grade to, and then I hover my mouse over this clip, the clip that I graded, and I press the middle wheel mouse button down, it will copy that grade over. So again, I'm just going to do it one more time to show you guys. Here's the clip I want to copy the grade to, and I'm going to middle mouse click on whatever clip I want to copy the grade from. Like I said before, this is a starting point for every single shot, you know? So this shot is actually much darker now than I probably want it to be, and that's probably a result of me having to knock down these whites, these super white areas. So after you apply that grade and you copy it to this new clip, you would go back and adjust again to whatever looks best for the shot. But what it's going to do is it's going to start you off in the right direction, and you'll have the same starting point as the clip that you copied it from. So that's an easy way to copy your grade over there. The next thing I want you guys to do is go into the Media tab, and what we're going to do is we're going to start a new sequence with some new footage. I got a buddy who shot a post-apocalyptic short film, and he donated a little bit of his footage for us to use over here. So we're going to import that footage now. It's 4 different shots of the same scene. So in your media page, go ahead and navigate to the Z drive, which should be your Davinci or your 4096 materials drive. And what you're going to look for is this Resolve Raw Video scene. Resolve Raw Video scene. There's 2 folders. One's called Resolve Raw Video, and that's all the footage we already have. And this Resolve Raw Video scene should have only 4 clips in it. So I'm going to drag a lasso around these 4 shots in that Resolve Raw Video scene folder, and I'm just going to drag those back into my raw footage bin. And you can see we've now imported them. We can look at them in the viewer. And if I drag a lasso around those in the raw footage bin and right click one of them, I can go to Create Timeline using selected clips. And I'm just going to call this Scene Correction. I'll click on Create New Timeline. And there's my sequence. So to keep everything organized, I'm going to left click on that and I'm going to drag it into my sequences bin. There's my sequences bin there. So now you should have 2 sequences in there, the one that we've been working with and the scene correction sequence. So if I double click on that, it'll open up that sequence. I'll go back to my color page. And just some good navigation tips here. If you notice at the very top of the color correction viewer, you'll see this raw footage scene selection, scene correction bin. If I click right here in that and I drop down that menu, I can choose other sequences from which to color correct. So if I choose the other sequence, it'll bring up our old one, and that'll bring up our new one. So you can see here we've got all these different shots that we need to grade. They all have different color temperatures, different amounts of exposure, and so we've got to do a little bit of work here to get everything kind of matched up. The first thing I'd like you guys to do, just for simplicity and so that everyone's on the same page as we do this, is we're going to go into our edit page, And I want you to rearrange the clips so that they're in order. You see I've labeled them CC1, CC2, 3, and 4. Just click and drag and rearrange the clips on the timeline so that they actually run in order. So now we've got to grade this scene. We've got to color correct this scene first. We'll grade it next class. We've got to color correct this scene now so that it looks like it all took place and was shot at the same exact time. So the first shot we're going to start working on is this shot right here, shot 3. Should be a kind of a CU profile of this dude shooting his gun. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll over until I see a muzzle flash in his arm. So maybe I'll scroll right to here in my timeline. So I'm using my timeline now instead of my clip timeline. And I'm just going to scroll over until I see his arms kind of light up from the gun there. And if you click right here under loop, this is a really handy tool. If you click on loop, it will just loop whatever clip you have selected to color grade. It'll just keep looping that over and over. It's always important while you're color correcting to play it every once in a while, or to at least scrub through it to make sure that it's not just that one frame that looks good, it's all of the frames that compose the entire shot. So always go back in there and check. So with this highlight, you know, his arms are highlighted there, the gun is going off in the frame. I'm actually going to color correct from this starting point right here. And I'm going to do my standard lift, gamma, gain adjustments along with some color correction using my CBC controls. So actually go ahead and color correct it to whatever you think looks best. Again, we're color correcting here, not grading, so try not to make it look cool. We're just trying to make it look normal. So once you've got kind of a pretty good grade there, or pretty good color correction there, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to do what's called a shot match. So this kind of works like the copy grade. Same kind of function, but we're going to use a different method here. So again, we've color corrected shot 3. And if I'm looking through the rest of this footage, shots 1 and shots 2 are both more in line with this grade, with this color correction, than this one. This one's really cool. And we actually cooled this shot down a little bit, at least I did, to kind of bring the color correction in to place. So I don't want to make this cooler than it already was. But this is nice and warm, and it's very low contrast. So I think I'm going to stick with shot 1 here. And I'm going to use what's called a shot match. And I'm going to apply a shot match to this first shot, shot 1. So what I'll do is I will left click on shot 1 in my clips timeline. So I have that red ring selected around shot 1. And I'll go back to the clip that I graded. I'll right click and I'll go shot match to this clip. Shot match to this clip. And if you click on that, you'll see that it applies a grade to it. Now, there's a couple important things that have happened here that is totally different from just copying your grade. In particular, this function analyzes not your grade, okay, not exactly all of these parameters that you adjusted. What Davinci is doing now is looking at the actual color values of the clip. It's analyzing your waveform monitor. So it's taking all of that new color information that you just created through that color correction grade, and it's analyzing it, and it's trying to match this new shot to it. Okay? So it's not copying the grade, it's analyzing it, and it's trying to match it based off of its own parameters. Another important thing that you'll notice if I click on this is that the color wheels, the contrast, nothing over here has actually been touched. Okay, all of these values in this new shot that we just shot matched to, all those values are set at their default values. And you'll see that this icon here is now shown up. That little 6 or 9 square icon with those 9 little dots on it. That means that a shot match effect has been applied. So it's actually an effect. What you can do is go back over here to your primaries wheels and correct it and add additional corrections to it. And you can see that, at least in my circumstance, my shot ended up a little darker than I wanted it to be, mostly because I was protecting for the highlights on the gunshot. So if I go back here and I start bringing up my gain to reset my white point for this particular shot, you'll see now that in the node editor, instead of just one effect being applied, you can see that there's also a grade applied now as well. Both of these are good starting points, but neither of them are ideal, right? I always see this as like, this gets you moving on each individual shot, whichever way you choose to do it. If you prefer to let Davinci kind of analyze your footage and figure out how best to match shots in the scene, then use the shot match function. If you want to have more manual control over your image, then use the apply grade and do it manually. You know what I mean? Let's move on now to manual scene color correction. So we saw how we could copy a grade or shot match a grade from shot to shot. But if we wanted to manually do this from the ground up every time, Davinci has that functionality as well. So I'd like you guys to click back over to this shot right around the time when maybe his gun is going off again, just to give us a good starting point. And if you right click on the image in your viewer and you go to grab still, you should see it pop up over here in the gallery. Now if your gallery isn't on, first make sure that you don't have this, your viewer expanded. You want to make sure that's off. And you also want to make sure that the gallery is turned on over here in the far left hand corner of your interface. It should be a little icon that says gallery. So go ahead and click on this shot of the woman here shooting her gun at the dude. And what we need to do is we need to try and match this shot now with this shot of the guy. A simple way to do this is to use what's called a wipe comparison. So I'm going to select my shot right here in the gallery, and I'll also make sure that this shot is selected in my clip timeline. And then if you come up here to this button in the far left corner, upper left hand corner of the viewer window, and you click it, you'll actually see a side-by-side comparison of the two shots. If for any reason you don't see these when you open up Davinci, you can come up here to this little drop-down box, those 3 circles, and click on Show Viewer Options, and they'll come right up. But if they're not selected, they'll be gone. So I'm actually going to expand my viewer a little bit here so I can see a little bit better. And if I click right on that transition mark between the two shots, you can see that I can adjust the wipe by dragging it left or right. So I can show more of one shot and less of the other. Or I can keep it right there in the middle. In the upper right hand corner of the viewer, you can also do a vertical wipe instead. So if I click on that, I adjust my wipe to be up and down instead. And then if you look at click on this button, the 2 arrows facing each other, you actually do a mix where you can mix the 2 shots together and see if their color values are matching. What's great about this, what I really love about this split viewer, is that it's actually splitting your parade into 6 parts. So the left side of the frame, again because it's an overlay graph, is going to be her shot, and the right side is going to be his. And you can actually see there's a little bit of a dividing line between each red, green, and blue channel. And that dividing line is separating the green, each channel based off of its image. You guys see that? So this is a fantastic way to try and match the color from one shot to another, just by looking at the parade, okay? So, using this control and having it turned on, I could now apply a grade to her shot while looking at the shot we're trying to match. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you guys go ahead and do that as well. And watch your parade and see how it's behaving as you adjust some of these parameters. You can kind of see the split as I make these kind of extreme adjustments. You can see the split in the parade. So I'm going to grade this shot just the same as I always do. Start with my gain, set my white point, and I'm actually looking at the white point established on his shot while I do this to try and match up where the white areas are in the parade. And the same with the black point. I want to kind of match black points as well. This is going to create kind of a match in contrast to begin with, which is important. Once I've kind of matched that contrast, I can then go into my CBC controls here, and I can try and manipulate the color values in each parameter so that they better match his shot. And then if you want to get rid of that image wipe, all you have to do is click on it, the icon up in the left hand side of the viewer again, and you can kind of deselect it and select it. Another cool thing is you can loop the shot that you're creating in comparison to the shot on the right while it's in wipe mode, so you can kind of see the full range of the shot. Another easy way to compare two shots together is to click on them in the timeline, select them in the clip timeline, and use your arrows up and down. So if I select up, I'll go back a clip, and if I select down, I'll go forward a clip. And I can kind of compare and contrast the two waveforms and the color correction on the viewer really quickly doing that as well. Okay, so by now you should have kind of graded these three shots, and they're actually not, you know, the match on mine is not too bad. But there's still other ways that we can kind of compare and contrast different shots together. So what I'd like you guys to do is make sure you're off of wipe mode. And then if you look right to the right of the wipe button, right here, under split screen, you shift select the shots on the timeline, like this. And then under the drop down box, right here in the right corner of the viewer, you would select selected clips. As you shift select clips on your timeline, they will pop up in a split screen mode. So now, using that control, I can go in and I can select one of these shots down here on the timeline. And whichever shot you're actually going to adjust the grade on will be outlined in gray. And of course, it would be the one that you select on your timeline down here in your clip timeline, which would be outlined in red right here. So if I wanted to grade this shot and compare it to the rest of the other shots in the timeline, I could just shift select backwards, and then any grade that I apply right here in my color balance wheels would be applied to this shot on the screen. And then the last view is a really cool view. It's called the light box over here. So be sure to turn off wipe and split screen mode. And if you go over here to the far right hand corner of the entire interface, you should see a little icon called light box. And this brings up all of the clips in your timeline. So if you had 20 clips in your timeline, it would bring up all 20. I could increase the size of the clip by using this slider bar in the upper right hand corner. And then by selecting one that I wanted to grade, particularly this last shot, I could click over here in the top, in the upper left-hand corner of the screen on color controls. And if I select that, I get my color controls back, and I can now apply a grade while looking at all of the shots on the timeline. What's really cool about all of these different split screen functions, or the wipe function, or even the lightbox function, is that Davinci will send this out to your reference monitor. So if you're using a color correction monitor in your suite, you will get this same view in the reference monitor. So you can color correct in all of these different views on a nice color calibrated monitor.